course, you get looked at like, what are you talking about? It's a blueprint. There's no on and off. And it's like, this all of a sudden changes the world because, like, genes don't control anything. Genes are blueprints. They're just like blueprints from a house. Blueprints, if we believe the genes work the way they did, it would be like taking a set of blueprints and driving by a building site, throwing the blueprints into the yard, drive down the road, and come back in a few weeks, and there's this house right there. It's like the genes created it. It's like, no, they're blueprints. and so the new science says, well, then how do you build and control all this? Well, it's a new science called epigenetic control, not genetic control, epigenetic control. It's just coming out into the public right now because it's so profound in its meaning. So what does it mean? Well, epi, the prefix means above. And so if I say genetic control, that's control by genes. If I say epigenetic control, that says control above the genes. And it's like, well, what does that mean? It says the genes are like blueprints, and the mind is like a contractor that reads the blueprints. And so as you perceive your world, your mind will adjust the genetics of your biology to create your perception. So the genes are potentials. They can create anything. And what you create with it is a complement to what you perceive. And you say, well, okay, Bruce, you stepped off the edge now. There's a lot of people out there. It's like, okay, your mind is turning on the genes, and it sounds like, what is all that? So if I could take just 2-3 minutes here, because if you understand the meaning of the science, how simple this experiment was that I did when my life changed. It was a simple experiment. Basically, what I did is I was cloning stem cells, and that was back in 1967, like over 40 years ago. There's just a few of us in the world that understood anything about stem cells. Only recently have they become something. But so I was way back there with these guys with some stem cells. And what did I do is I'd isolate just one stem cell and put it into a tissue culture dish all by itself. The cell divides every about 10 hours. And then I go, okay, so after 10 days to 2 weeks, there must be like thousands of cells in the dish. But what's unique is that every cell is genetically identical to every other cell because they all came from the same parent. So now I have genetically identical cells, thousands of them. So here's the experiment, and it blew my mind. I take the population, split them up into 3 separate petri dishes, and I change the environment for the cells, meaning the culture medium. And the culture medium to a cell is like our environment with the air and the water and the biology of the ecosphere around us. So the cell's environment is they live in this culture fluid. So by changing the chemical composition of the culture fluid, I had 3 dishes. And so I had 3 different compositions of environment. And in one dish, the cells form muscle. In another dish, the stem cells form bone. And in a third dish, the stem cells form fat cells. And it's like, okay. And then you say a simple question, what controls the fate of the cells? And the answer turns out very simply, well, they were genetically identical, so the genes couldn't have done that because they all had the same genes. The only thing that was different was the environment. And so it's like, so it's the environment and the cell were interacting, and the environment information was used to engage the genetic expression of the cell. So in different environments, the cells engage in different expressions. And so we say, yeah, if I take a healthy dish, a plastic dish of my stem cells from a healthy environment and move it into a not so good environment, a less than optimal environment, the cells get sick. Now, if you were like a miniature cell in that dish and you were like the doctor cell, and the cells would say, what drugs should I take to make me better? And here's the wonderful answer. You take no drugs. You just take the dish and return it back to the original good condition it was, bring it back to the good environment. The cells become a reflection of the environment. The health of the cell is a reflection of the environment that it lives in. So now I say, okay, cool, I move the dish to a good environment and the cells get well. I move it to a bad environment, they get sick. So the environment and the cells are lockstep, and the culture medium composition determines the fate. And that's cool, that's plastic petri dishes and all that. Now here comes the jump, and the jump is this. when we look at ourselves in the mirror, Lance, if you look in the mirror, there's a single human being given the name Lance looking back at you. I see Bruce. All the listeners out there see themselves as a single human being, and then I go, well, it's an illusion because, in fact, while we see ourselves as a single entity, the truth is we're actually made out of 50 trillion cells. It's the cells that are the living elements. When I say the word me, I'm saying the word, I'm talking for a community of 50 trillion cells. So here's the jokey part that's like profound, and it goes like this. Okay, so then the human body is the equivalent of a skin-covered petri dish with 50 trillion cells in it. And the culture medium is called the blood. And the composition of the culture medium determines the genetic expression and the behavior. Okay? Now here comes the next step. I say, and what controls the blood's chemistry? And the answer is the brain is the chemist that releases the hormones and the signals and the regulators that control the environment. And I go, yeah, but what causes the brain to release different chemicals? And the answer is perception. It's what you see that causes the release of the chemistry. So I'm sitting here, my eyes closed, and all of a sudden I open up my eyes and there's a saber-toothed tiger. My perception is, oh my God! And what's going to happen? I'm going to release, in this case, fight or flight response, which causes stress hormones to be sent from my body. Okay? And the stress hormones like histamine and epinephrine and cortisol, they change the genetics and behavior of the cell to get the organism into a protection mode, get it ready to run. Okay? And then I go, okay, what happens if I'm sitting there, my eyes closed, and I then open up my eyes, and before me is my beautiful partner, Margaret, and I see her. All of a sudden, I release different chemicals. I release the bonding chemicals of oxytocin. I release dopamine, the feel-good chemicals. I release growth hormones, the maintenance of the body chemicals. So basically it says, wait, I changed the culture medium by whatever I saw when I opened my eyes. And the answer is yes. And then the question is, but then we go to an interesting story. So, well, two people can look at the same environment and they see completely different things. And when they see different things, they release different chemistry. So two people in the same environment can have totally different biologies going on based on what they see. And then here comes the scary part. The scary part goes like this. If your mind makes a misinterpretation, do the cells know that there was an error? And the answer is no. What do the cells know? They just got the signal from the brain. I open up my eyes in that moment of like haziness, let's say coming out of sleep. I look and all of a sudden I think I see a saber-toothed tiger in front of me. In that moment, just like, oh, you know, all of a sudden all this adrenaline is running through me, and then all of a sudden I just, you know, like, oh, it was just a fuzzy thing, and it was somebody I know. It was just like an image just got transposed, and there wasn't anything really wrong, but my cells didn't know that. My cells got the full jolt of all the adrenaline running through the system. Yeah. So the idea about it is this. If we hold beliefs or perceptions that are not true, we adjust our biology as if they were true. And the issues about that is if we hold beliefs that are stressful, then the biology that results from these perceptions, whether they're real or not, the perceptions will lead to chemistry that actually is what we now recognize the primary cause of disease in human biology. It's not from the genes. The primary cause of disease is the way our lifestyle is and the way we live in our world. This is the cause of the disease, and yet we keep looking for genetic causes and genetic cures when it's like, no, it was just lifestyle. That's basically what it was. Boy, did I ramble on that one.
No, this is really fascinating because I have heard before that the brain can't distinguish between a real event and one that's imaginary. So that would include television and theater and movies and so on, wouldn't it? And wars and
beliefs of war.
That's focusing on some horrible events, which create a lot of fear. And then also, isn't not true that the bulk of the food that we eat has very little nutrition in it, having milked out the phytonutrients out of the soil many decades ago, and then we don't even know how much is genetically modified.
So we're in a crisis there, aren't we? And it is, but why is it important? Because it's forcing us to do something different. And what is that something different? In that case, it says start to eat local, start to eat organic. And then all of a sudden you start to realize, I don't have to be a victim of that. I have choices. And this is what's so good about the new genetics. The old genetics was the genes control who you are. You're a victim. But why? Because you didn't pick the genes. You can't change them. And they determine your life, so you're just like waiting like a gene time bomb that waits for a gene to cause something. And that's the old belief. The new belief says it's your perception that interfaces the cells via the blood's chemistry. And why is that relevant? Because I can change my perception. And it's like, well then you can change your biology by the way you perceive your life. And if you change your perception, you change your biology. And the answer is it's exactly what epigenetics is all about. Wow.
Well, now, I just read today that scientists have created the first artificial DNA molecule.
Oh boy, that's really pushing that they created something synthetic. They did. It's a tour de force technically. Okay.
Yeah.
And what Venter did was he made a copy of a chromosome from a different species. So he synthesized. He took the original chromosome from the first species and put it into a chemical soup that caused many, many copies of it to be made. So they were being made synthetically, actually by a machine at some point. They found the sequence. They made a sequence. And so they copied the original DNA of something else, and then they put their copy into another cell. So did they synthetically make a new cell? And the answer is no. They took a copy. They were able to synthesize a copy of an existing cell and put it into another cell. So there's a big difference because it would suggest like, I know all the things of how to make a cell work. In fact, you didn't know that because you just copied this other one. You don't even know how the other one works. So basically it's like, so you copied it, and I say technically really cool, okay? Except for the fact is they don't know how it works, so they just took out a cell's chromosome, put in the copied version, and then it just took off like the original version. But the idea is, so if you ask the question, well, do you know how this really works? And the answer is, well, not really. You just put this piece of DNA in there, and it's like. So I get upset about it because it's just a big, it's a lot of publicity stuff. But it also scares me because they don't know how it works. That's exactly it. I mean, the issue is
to continue messing around with it to see what they can add some together to create some kind of new life form, and that. Combined with nanotechnology, with biology and DNA, could be a scary process.
It's more scary than helpful for this reason. They don't know how the existing system works.
Right.
And so the idea of trying to change pieces of the programming is like putting a virus, which it is, in fact, that's what they're doing. They're putting genes in via viruses, and I say, well, okay, good. How effective are the viruses in your computer? And all of a sudden, it could jam the damn machine. It's like, this is exactly the problem. They don't know how it works, but they're still trying to change the information. It's like, but you don't know how it creates this fabulous structure from these few building blocks. It's like, and yet you want to change the life of it. It's like, dangerous.
It's pretty frightening.
Yes. Yes.
And then some scientists, in fact, there's a fairly large group of them, are working to push toward an event horizon in which artificial intelligence is more powerful than we are and takes over, because they see that as the solution to our problems such as war and food production and so forth. But we're talking about kind of a Matrix-type world, aren't we?
That's exactly what you're talking about. Boy, I'd stay away from that one right away, It's just basically this is so misunderstood reality that's going on here. And that kind of thinking is the kind of thinking that is even pushing us closer to the edge of that extinction, this modifying the environment, because biologically we